So today, the day before our U.S. presidential election, today, a whole new country just got involved in the combat in the war in Ukraine. Ukraine announced today that for the first time, its soldiers launched an attack against troops from a foreign country that Russia has just brought in to support its own army on the border between Russia and Ukraine. Russia has brought in another country now. They've brought in troops from North Korea to fight their war in Ukraine now. And the initial reports about this were that maybe a couple of thousand North Korean soldiers were in Russia. Maybe they were there to observe the performance of North Korean weapons that Russia was using in its war. Maybe they were just observers. Then it became quickly that clearly they weren't just observers. There were too many of them for that. It was like 2,000, maybe. No, it was maybe 10,000, maybe reports of 12,000 North Korean troops. And they're not observers, they're combat troops. And Russia has put them on the front line at the border between Russia and Ukraine. And today, Ukrainian forces said for the first time that they fired on those North Korean troops. So now, the biggest land war in Europe since World War II, 80 years ago, it now also involves significant combat forces from another country, from North Korea. And they are in the fight. They are in combat. Russia, of course, has been using weapons already from North Korea. They've been using weapons already from Iran as well. Russia has the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. They keep threatening to use it. They've now formed an alliance with the world's other two most notorious rogue states who have either gone nuclear or have tried to: North Korea and Iran. And it's not just them. Of all the October surprises for this year for our election, I mean, and there's been a bunch from Trump's longest-serving chief of staff and his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff going on the record to confirm that they both believe Trump is literally a fascist and that he wants to rule the United States as a fascist dictator, to the shock Iowa poll showing Kamala Harris, the Democrat, winning in what's supposed to be a solid red state, to the release of a tape recording of disgraced con man and child rapist Jeffrey Epstein saying he and Donald Trump were best friends for a decade, to the collapse of Trump's ability to fill a room, his closing string of empty rally venues. I mean, there's been so many strange turns and twists and surprises and shocks at the end of this election campaign. But of all the October surprises this year, this is the one that stuck to me like somebody pinned it to me with a dart. The Wall Street Journal reporting that, quote, late last year, the Kremlin made a request to the owner of the Starlink satellite system to, quote, not activate Starlink, that satellite system, over Taiwan. The request was made by Vladimir Putin personally to the owner of the Starlink satellite system, and that request was made to him, quote, as a favor to the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping. So here's Vladimir Putin waging war against one of our allies, biggest war in Europe since World War II. He's threatening to nuke anyone who tries to stop him. He's got Iran on his side, supplying him with weapons for that war. He's got North Korea on his side, supplying him with weapons, and now sending him more than 10,000 combat soldiers to fight alongside his army. And he's apparently passed along a friend request, a favor request from the communist dictator of China. Hey, Starlink, don't turn on Starlink satellites over Taiwan. Taiwan, of course, which is also an ally of the United States. And per the Wall Street Journal, the owner of Starlink appears to have agreed to do this favor for the Chinese dictator. The request passed on to him by his friend, the Russian dictator, against this American ally. Or at least per the Wall Street Journal, we can at least say the Starlink service is in fact not activated over Taiwan after Putin expressly requested that it not be activated over Taiwan as a favor to him and as a favor to the leader of China. Now, why is this an election story? Why are you telling me this story on election eve, Rachel Maddow? This is an election story because the owner of Starlink, the guy who's on the phone with the Russian dictator in this story, he is currently what appears to be the de facto CEO of the Donald Trump for President campaign. Not just funding his campaign personally to the tune of over $100 million, not just personally managing Donald Trump's ground game for voter turnout, but also turning his own social media company, Twitter, into an all-Trump, all-the-time conspiracy theory and propaganda machine that eagerly amplifies even the most obviously foreign disinformation, boosting Trump and targeting his Democratic opponents. Walter Isaacson reported in his recent book on Elon Musk that Musk was asked by the Kremlin to not let Ukraine use the Starlink satellite system over the Black Sea, where Ukraine was targeting Russian Navy ships to sink them. The Wall Street Journal reports that Musk is now in frequent and secret communication with Putin and the Russian government. And also that it is Putin's Russian troops who are now using Elon Musk's Starlink service on the battlefield in their war against our ally Ukraine, even as he cuts Ukraine off from that service at key strategic moments. So you see where this is going? Happy election eve, right? I mean, Trump himself says he, quote, doesn't talk about his secret communications with Putin. Bob Woodward's latest book reporting that Trump himself has been in frequent secret communication with Putin since Trump left office and now while he is trying to get back into office, while Putin is leading a new world axis. Not just leading a war against our ally Ukraine, but leading a new world axis of Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China against the United States. Putin leading that axis against the United States with the assistance of one particular American who holds multi-billion-dollar sensitive defense and space contracts with the U.S. government and who has mostly taken over the ground game operations and the funding of Trump's presidential campaign. So, like I said, pace yourself. I mean, if Trump wins the election, we pretty clearly are going to be joining the Axis, right? These countries that most want America destroyed, that most want to remove the United States from the world stage, that want to destroy us as a country and diminish us as much as they can, this Axis led by Russia will be joining it if Trump is elected. Trump says our so-called allies he doesn't like, while he's full of unreserved, totally unqualified praise for the dictators in this axis, right? He has telegraphed that we will switch sides in the Ukraine war, meaning we'll switch to Putin's side, where he's now using North Korean troops in battle. Trump is full of praise for the North Korean dictator. He has telegraphed that we will leave NATO, that will collapse NATO. The countries in the world who are most violently opposed to the United States and most determined to seek the diminishment of America and the end of American influence on the world stage, they, if Trump wins, will have their president installed with Elon Musk's help, while Musk is in direct and secret communication with Vladimir Putin, who heads up that axis. Right? So pace yourself, right? If that happens, if Trump wins, that's what's going to happen to America on the world stage. And Americans who think that's a bad idea are going to have a lot of work to do, right? Your country will need you. But also think about if he loses. If Trump loses, given what I just described, America's got a lot of work to do along these lines as well. Because just as a presidential campaign, this is a national security disaster, and one that President Harris is going to have to clean up, and quickly. I mean, you really can't have the head of a company that is the primary rocket launcher for the Defense Department and NASA. You can't have the head of that company in secret communications with America's worst enemy, while America's enemy is actively waging a war against one of our allies, especially once you learn that he's using his businesses to help the other side, to help Russia in that war, and apparently to do secret favors for China against our other allies like Taiwan. I mean, that can't be. I mean, also, just for what it's worth, presumably a guy who's reported to have regularly used ketamine plus LSD, cocaine, ecstasy, and shrooms, and who smokes weed on a national podcast, presumably he can't even have a security clearance. A personal security clearance. But you definitely can't have a security clearance, let alone that much leverage over American national security, if you are doing anti-American diplomatic favors for dictators with whom you are in secret communication. So buckle up. Even if Trump doesn't win, the Defense Department and NASA are going to need a new arrangement for all their rockets and for all the multi-billion-dollar contracts Elon Musk's companies have with the U.S. government. The U.S. government is going to have to either, unwind from all of those contracts, or Elon Musk's companies are going to have to unwind from him. This is an untenable reality in national security terms, now that we know what we know about Elon Musk. This election, regardless of who wins, has produced a national security problem that is going to be a huge new thing for our country to deal with, likely with tons of drama, and it will start as soon as we've got an election result either way. So pace yourself, if for no other reason than to be ready for that.